Okay, welcome. The version of Scribe that I'm going to be going over today is the Scribe sparse version. Now, if you're working on a meta-analysis that would not make use of our behavioral subdomains, the sparse version is a good choice. The new sparse version of Scribe, which I'll cover today, does not require the input of behavioral domains, and generally the inclusion process is much faster into the BrainMap database. Okay, so first let's make sure that you are using the most updated version of Scribe. Personally, I would do this step every time I sit down to enter a batch of files, since the software is often updated to account for emerging changes in the BrainMap schema, as well as potential glitches in the software. We have a great pair of programmers, Mick and Angela, and we beta test a lot, but glitches, they can happen. Okay, so go to your web browser and go to BrainMap.org. We're going to navigate to the software page. Scribe is the third software down on the page. And then you want to select the appropriate download at the top right of the screen. Okay? All right. Now that we've made sure you're using the most updated version, so we can go ahead and work on a functional file. Okay, this one has already been done, so I'm going to go ahead and use this as a frame of reference. So for brevity's sake, I will be doing a broad overview of sparse Scribe, but some input areas like the pros, the subjects, conditions, experiments, and the template will be covered in more detail in other videos, which you will find under the training tab on the BrainMap.org website. Okay? All right, so one thing we want to make sure is when you do start a new file, you want to make sure to select sparsely coded, okay? The first tab is the Citations tab. Now, thanks to our great programmers, you'll find that Scribe has a pretty intuitive interface, and the Citation tab is no exception. This is where you'll add all the pertinent information about the paper, for example, title, page, journal, and the author information. For the title, we want to make sure that you capitalize the first word of the title as well as the first word after a colon per se. If there was a colon here, you just capitalize the next letter. You want to capitalize proper nouns, for example, Huntington's, and only use acronyms like NIH or ADHD if they exist in the title. If there's a period at the end of the title, please go ahead and omit it. Now, for the majority of the items you'll see throughout Scribe, there's all these pull-down menus. You also have the choice of selecting Other and entering a new item. However, please don't use abbreviations or acronyms when creating an other item. And we also want to make sure that with any of these, you have adequately gone through all of the selections to make sure that you're not replicating a selection that's already there. Okay? For the journal, don't list sections or issues. The date entered for journals published quarterly should just be entered as January and whatever the year is. Okay, the institution, list the name of the institution where the data was acquired and the university name, not the department. Citation keywords. So you'll see that there's several options here again, and you can select them and you can select and move it over. Or another little shortcut is you can do tab, say tab and space bar, and that'll also move it over as well. Okay, same thing with the authors. You want to keep the keywords in the same list that they are published in the paper. So you want to keep those in the same order. And same thing with the authors. You want to keep those in the same order. And you have the option of moving these up and down as well, just like you do in the keywords. Okay, now you want to enter the exact keywords listed. For example, fMRI and functional MRI are two different keywords. We don't want to use capital letters except when entering proper nouns and names. Again, enter only the keywords listed in the keywords section of the paper. If there are none, leave it blank. Keywords, again, should be in the same order as well as the authors. Okay? For the authors, follow the format. It should be the last name, a space, and then the first name initials, a space, and then the middle initial. No punctuation. Don't add another version of the author's name, please. That already appears in the database. For example, Friston K space J may already be in there as Friston K, and you just select Friston K instead of creating a new version. Don't hyphenate first names of authors. Example, Marie Claire Antoinette should be entered as Antoinette with the first initials, one initial and then a space in the other. No hyphenation there. For both keyword and author fields, a few things to keep in mind. Again, list in the order of appearance, and please be careful to review all of the items before selecting other and adding anything new. The keyword or the name you're looking for is often there, but it may be in another form, so look carefully. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the Submitter tab now. Now, this one's pretty self-explanatory. You'll enter your name, your work email, and your phone, and the appropriate coder type. For example, I'm staff, so I would put staff here. You want to check the appropriate box if you are, in fact, the author of the paper. Now, when you're done doing this, you want to save as defaults, and what that will do is save your information so that you won't have to retype it on subsequent submissions. Next is the Pros tab. This tab is covered more fully in another tutorial which you can find on our website, so I won't go into this into too much detail, but there are a few areas to be careful of. The prose description should always be written in third person and is broken down into subheaders. These include the purpose, hypothesis, aims, methods, condition, and experiments. This should be likened to, an outline or the bones of the study, whereas the specific details or the meat of the paper will be covered in subsequent tabs. The hypothesis or aims will not always be clearly stated in an article. If the author does not explicitly state the expectations of the study, omit this section. This should not be difficult. If they're not easily identified, just move on. Now, most of these subheader sections should be relatively easy. I want you to think copy and paste. Any real writing here should just involve basic summaries. For example, the conditions should be easily pulled from the method section of the paper. For the experiment section of the prose to be eligible for submission into the BrainMap database, these experiments must be whole-brained and provide coordinate-based data. Please enter all of the eligible experiments. We can't accept incomplete entries, and they'll be returned until all the experiments are included. Titles of experiments can either be taken directly from the paper or to the tables. They can reflect the comparison being done by showing how the conditions were involved. Abbreviations are acceptable, but the first use must always have a full reference. Then the subsequent ones can just be entered in the abbreviated form. For example, you have here theory of mind. So in experiments, for example, that first one is all the way spelled out, but then the subsequent ones are abbreviated. Another example would be attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Should be spelled out for the first condition, and then subsequent conditions could be ADHD, for example. Now, if the paper includes a region of interest contrast, these are not eligible, but should be noted in the prose somewhere at the bottom of the page. You would do, just indicated here at the bottom, asterisk, additional ROI experiments were excluded, something like that. Okay? Now you want to make sure and save here at this point so you can save your work. And you want to do that throughout just to make sure that all your work is adequately in there. Okay, now next is the Subjects tab. This tab is also covered more fully in another tutorial, which you can find on our website, so I won't go into this one too much. You just want to choose a descriptive title. Normal subjects groups will always be healthy controls now. So if let's go ahead and open one of these up. You want to select the appropriate diagnosis as well as any comorbid diagnoses. The inclusion-exclusion criteria should also be in here. Now, you don't need both, but one of them is good. Okay? You can also use the free text field and pull-downs provided to accurately describe the subject or population mix. The total subjects and mean age must be filled out and not left blank, otherwise it won't save. Okay? The native language should not be assumed. Again, if a study is done in Spain, we don't want to assume that all the subjects are Spanish speakers. Okay? All right, next is the Conditions tab. In the sparse version which you are using today, you'll only be required to name the condition. Okay? Let me open one of these up. You'll see that all these other fields are going to be grayed out. Now there's a tutorial on this one as well, and so for help entering the conditions or any external variables measured, you can go to the website and find that tutorial as well. Just make sure for that each possible external variable that you do choose that you address it in the the short description down here. Okay. All right, and another quick tip, you can make use of the duplicate functions. You can find this on the conditions as well as the experiments tab, which will save all the information, and then you can edit as needed. And another little tip, once you're done doing all of your conditions as well as your experiments, you can hit Command A, select all, and you can copy it, and you can move it right into the pros here if you like. Okay. Now again, after you're done doing the conditions, you want to save your work. Let's go ahead and move to sessions now. Now most studies have only one scanning session. In this case, it's not necessary to click add session for only having the one session, obviously. However, let's keep this in mind. If a subject is set up and released and then set up again, then the second setup marks the beginning of a second section. For example, pre- and post-treatment studies and before and after practice studies would involve multiple sessions. If you do add multiple sessions, choose an appropriate name and make sure that you give like an adequate description in each of those. Okay? Did p-values. In both these instances, you will have to split them up. Now, the contrast is gone over a little more extensively in one of our other videos, an experiment video, which is also on the BrainMap website. So I won't go into too much detail here, but this is an important documentation field, so you want to make sure and fill this out accurately. Paradigm class, again, you can select your paradigm class from the possible classes field so you want to press select for each paradigm class from the possible classes field that was included in the experiment. And when you're finished making your selections, verify that all the classes selected appear on the right-sided window in the selected classes field. And you can refer to the BrainMap Lex at the BrainMap.org website for help here as well. Co-code multiple paradigm classes if you need to, but only include the paradigm classes for activation and deactivation conditions and not the ones for rest or baseline control. A behavioral domain we won't have to fill out here for this version of ScribeSparse. And then the locations. Okay, so if there is a discrepancy, i.e., for example, there's a table that indicates the coordinates that are right hemisphere, but they start with a negative value for x. Go with the x value, not the hemisphere given in the text. So negative values equal left hemisphere, positive values equal right. The SPI unit, we only record z's, t's, or r values. And only include, if stated in the text, don't include the voxel size, and convert if you need to. And again, as in the conditions, you can make use of the duplicate experiment field, which will replicate the experiment, and then you can just change the locations as needed. You'll find this is often very useful when creating these functional files. Okay, just as you did with conditions, once you're done entering all the experiments, you can select all of these again. Just do Command A, select all, and copy and paste them into the prose description if you like. Just a little shortcut there. And we want to go ahead and make sure and save our work here as well when you're done entering in all the experiments. Next, we have the Results Synopsis tab. For the results, just copy the published abstract from PubMed. After that, just delete the first sentences that deal with the introduction, methods, and design of the study, and leave only the sentences concerning the results and the conclusions. Don't edit the synopsis to include your own interpretation of the study, please, and only change the verbiage to reflect a third-person past tense view. And finally, we have the Feedback tab. Please note that this tab is not viewable in Sleuth by the public, only by the BrainMap coding and development team. Important things to document here are the following: template, transform information, if there were no coordinates provided for some of the experiments, if the existing paradigms were not sufficient, and you did in fact have to add a new paradigm, please go ahead and indicate this here as well as a flag to the reviewer. Another thing to document here would be inconsistencies within the paper. Comments for the reviewer, for example, things the coder could not glean accurately from the paper, or if something that you were unsure of or had trouble with. That about wraps it up. Under the Help menu in the menu bar, you'll also find the Show Sparse Coded Manual, and you can refer to it any time during the input of your submission. There are also training versions of Scribe, both beginner and intermediate, that provide tips, helps, reminders, etc. along the way that are currently in development, and those should be available on the BrainMap website as well. Okay, thank you for your time. And again, if you want any other further help, you can look at the BrainMap.org website for the other training videos, as well as the forums that are on BrainMap.org as well. Thank you.